Hello everyone, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! And I'm back with another tier list. It is Monday. This is going to be a chiller tier list than most. It's a chill tier list, and it's also a tale of two tier lists. That's right. It's Oliver Twist. It was the best of tier lists. It was the worst of tier lists. Is that Oliver Twist? Is that what I'm saying? Am I saying that right? Hold on. Okay, after further review, it is not Oliver Twist. It's obviously A Tale of Two Cities, what I was referencing before. And Oliver Twist was written by Charles Dickens, who wrote A Tale of Two Cities. So my brain was in the right area, but my brain was in the wrong area. There we go. So first, I wanted to talk to you all about the very high-level competitive tier list that you're going to see inside Pokemon Unite, and how a lot of the information in that tier list might not be that relevant to you. I mean, it's a good tier list, don't get me wrong. It's very relevant for the highest level of coordinated five-man play, but it's not that relevant for everyone else, and I'll tell you why. Let me take you over to this tier list over on Unite DB. Okay, so this is the tier list over at Unite DB. This is decided on by people at the Floatstone Council, I believe is what it says, correct? The Floatstone Discord tier council for creating this tier list. Basically, this is the highest level tier list in Pokemon Unite. This is high level play. And looking at this tier list, you will recognize that certain Pokemon are extremely good from looking at this, and you will also get some information that I think might skew your play for the other 99% of players out there. Look, if you are in a coordinated 5-person team and you are trying to figure out the best combination to run, especially against other coordinated 5-person teams, this tier list is fantastic. Essentially what it is saying is there's a meta, and basically what it is right now is one person in the top lane, 3 people, I guess I should say Pokemon. 1 Pokemon in the top lane, 3 Pokemon in the bottom lane, and 1 Pokemon in the jungle on both sides. And oftentimes, that Pokemon that is in the top lane is Lucario here. This isn't every time, but Lucario often runs the entire top lane by themselves against another Lucario. You will often see a mirror matchup in the top lane. And what this tier list is telling you is, inside that meta, that is kind of, I'm going to be honest, dictated mostly by Lucario and a few other Pokemon. These are the Pokemon that are viable in that meta. Again, not a lot of this is going to be relevant to you climbing through the ranks, playing Master Rank games. You're not going to get people that are running the most popular meta inside those games unless you have multiple people who are all agreeing to do it. So, without question, Cinderace, Lucario, and Venusaur are top-tier Pokemon, all for different reasons. Cinderace is amazing. You'll often find it in the jungle. Venusaur, pretty incredible. You'll often find it in the bottom lane. Again, this is in the highest ranked play. And Lucario, incredible. You'll often find Lucario in the top lane. As far as the A ranks go, these are all Pokemon that move in and out of position, but Eldegoss, Mr. Mime are essentially always bottom. You never see them anywhere else. And Talonflame, Zeraora. Sometimes Talonflame will take the jungle in the place of Cinderace, and sometimes Zeraora will take the top lane in place of Lucario. Again, the information you're getting from this list is that these Pokemon are amazing, which is true, but it doesn't mean that if you're running Eldegoss in solo queue, you're going to do a great job for your team necessarily, or Mr. Mime, even though, again, both great Pokemon. As you go further down the list, this is where it kind of becomes interesting. So up at the top of the list there, every single one of those Pokemon are great inside the game right now and pretty great in solo queue. But then you see someone like Blastoise, Blissey, Mamoswine, Snorlax, Cramorant, all B tier. Still got a B tier. So what this essentially means is these Pokemon may or may not make it into a 5-person comp, but most everything you're getting in a 5-person comp are in these top 2 rows. Most everything. You don't have a defender yet, but most of the time you're seeing the entire 5-person comp in these top 2 rows. Essentially, B tier is a list of Pokemon that you could switch in for one of them. Most likely you'd be swapping out a Mr. Mime or Zeraora or something like that with a Blastoise, Mamoswine, Snorlax. You could run Blissey instead of Eldegoss. Cramorant might make it into the bottom lane. These are, I guess I would look at these as good second choices to make it into that very popular comp. From here, I'm going to be honest, the rest of the list I don't think is that useful. I guess I wouldn't say so. Here are my thoughts on the rest of this list here. C tier, D tier, and F tier. Basically, in F tier, they're saying these Pokemon haven't fit into the meta for a little while. And I do understand that. However, someone looking at this list would go, oh, Crustle and Machamp, they're F tier Pokemon. Well, kind of. They're F tier in this one specific use case, which is high-level tournament play. And even then, I'm not... look, I'm not the greatest tournament player, so I'll take their word for it. But I have seen Crustle and Machamp used somewhat. Garchomp I've never seen used, and I understand why. But someone looking at this tier list, I think they would walk away from it thinking that Crustle and Machamp are F-tier Pokemon in most other play, and the truth is they aren't. And as you go up the list, you see other situations like this. For instance, Gengar. Gengar, I don't know why is not an F tier. I never see anyone run Gengar. Gardevoir, I also think is kind of a very, very low tier choice because you have to replace it probably with a jungle Pokemon, but maybe they're seeing some people run it. Charizard, I never see run competitively. Absol, I never see run competitively. So I'm a little confused as to how this list works. I understand, you got Wiggly, Slowbro, Ninetales in the C tier. They're saying that from time to time they would replace people possibly in the A or B tier with one of these Pokemon and they're not as viable. I understand it, but the truth is in high-level play, if we're being honest, a few of these Pokemon never get played. And then a few of them do see play from time to time. So I think when you look at this list, you'll go, oh, I guess Pikachu is better than Crustle. And I don't think that's true. And I don't even think this list is saying that's true. This list is just saying this is what works in the meta right now. I know it's kind of a convoluted conversation, but it's weird to look at this list and think that maybe some people could look at a tier list like this and decide how they want to play in solo queue or how they want to play climbing the ranks, because it doesn't really... It's not fully relevant. It's true that all the Pokemon at the top here are great, but it's not even that true that the Pokemon positioned in the bottom here aren't. They're just how they fall into that meta. So I just wanted to talk briefly about this tier list because I think if you look at it, you might convince yourself that certain Pokemon that are pretty viable, like Crustle, are not actually any good. Or Machamp is kind of a decent Pokemon. I think Machamp is better than pretty much everyone in the D tier, I would say. But it is what it is. This is a tier list that is based upon the highest level of coordinated 5-person play. And that's an important list because you get to see how the best players are utilizing the Pokemon inside the game. A tier list I wanted to make for you today, let's be honest, the tier list I wanted to make for you today was a socks tier list. I just wanted to go over all the socks in the game and rank them, but I'm not sure how I'm going to get all the PNGs for all the socks. It's like a whole thing. I got to figure that out, but I do want to do a socks tier list. Instead, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a tier list based on how I think I see people play with Pokemon. Boy, that didn't sound right. This tier list is how the community plays a Pokemon, how good they are with a certain Pokemon. I got this idea from Solo Queue Masters' Pain on my Discord tier list on how well the community play each character. And that's what I'd like to make for you here today. All right, so here we have our tier list for today. This is a tier list based on how I see other people play these popular Pokemon. We have mostly great tier, meaning that people mostly play this Pokemon pretty dang well. We have the usually okay tier, which means if I see someone pick this Pokemon, I think, yeah, they'll do just fine. We got the B tier. Still got the B tier. B tier in this, I would say, is for Pokemon where I'm like, I don't really know where to put this. I'm just going to say B. For the next tier, we have the Wild Swings tier. Look, there are some Pokemon that I think when I see someone pick, I go, you're either going to win us the match or you're going to lose us the match. And those are the Pokemon I have in the Wild Swings category. And then the often quite bad category. And those are for Pokemon that, people play and they're often quite bad. let's start organizing this list. So let's start with someone that I see people play that is mostly great and not a surprise, and that is Venusaur. The reason I think Venusaur tops our list as a Pokemon that I see people play that is mostly great is not only because people understand how to play it, it's because Venusaur is really overpowered right now. The Giga Drain Petal Dance build is kind of the game on easy mode. So even if you are bad at the game, this is a really good Pokemon to play. I mostly see people do well with this. Even if they're kind of not amazing, they're still doing better than they would with a ton of other choices because this is such a simple Pokemon to play. You turn on Petal Dance, you walk to the enemy, you hit them with Giga Drain, and your basic attacks repeat, repeat, repeat. Not only is this one of the best Pokemon in the game, but it's also a Pokemon that people perform at extremely well. It's pretty simple to play this Pokemon, and that's why I think I see most players do great with Venusaur. Let's talk about someone that's often quite bad. Where to begin with an often quite bad? Well, let's just jump to the top of the list. Someone we see people lose matches with all the time, and that's Garchomp. Garchomp is a hard Pokemon to play. One of the hardest in the game, in my opinion. The concept behind Garchomp is easy, but the way people are able to push Garchomp away from them, the way Garchomp needs to be right next to you to be effective, the way Garchomp has no executions, Garchomp just has so many problems. So I often see people play Garchomp in a way where I think, you're costing us the game here. And it's partially a fault of Garchomp, and it's partially a fault of the player, and it's partially a fault of the game. Again, Garchomp has a really tough time inside the meta right now, and it's because it needs to be right next to you to be good. It needs to ramp up and have all its basic attacks, and even then, it still doesn't have enough sustain sometimes to really do the amount of damage it needs to do. The amazing things about Garchomp is it can solo objectives, If it's fed and over leveled, it's pretty amazing. But as I say oftentimes about Garchomp, you can just walk away. You just walk away. Bye, Garchomp. See you later. And then all of a sudden, Garchomp is so much less useful. Contrast that to someone like Venusaur here, where Venusaur, yes, you can walk away from Venusaur, but it can use its Petal Dance and run right back up to you. It's tankier than Garchomp when it hits with its Giga Drain. Its sustain is even better. It's weird because it's almost like Venusaur is doing some of the things they thought Garchomp was doing with its basics. Garchomp is one of the toughest characters to have on your team. It needs a lot of experience. It doesn't do well in early team fights. It doesn't have execute abilities, which means it can't take things out. It can chunk all the HP down from Zapdos, but then the enemy Talonflame can just jump in and smash on it, and there you go, you lost Zapdos. So I think when I see people pick Venusaur, I'm usually feeling pretty good, and when I see people pick Garchomp, I think, ooh, we're in for a tough time, because oftentimes they are quite bad at this game. Let's see, people who hang out in the, let's do a wild swings category, why don't we? Ooh, here's a good one. Lucario. Lucario on the last tier list we looked at is S tier. Lucario is an S tier Pokemon. It's absolutely incredible. It's so good, and also I think people are either great with it or they are horrible with Lucario. The thing about Lucario is it lanes so well, it scores so well, it's kind of unstoppable in those respects, and it also steals objectives very well if you're using Power-Up Punch. It can output a ton of damage. It's incredible in team fights with extreme speed. It's incredible taking down wild Pokemon with close combat. Bone Rush lets it reset its abilities in an incredible way, so you can outplay people with it. But that doesn't mean that you're going to outplay people with it, because you actually have to be good enough to outplay someone with Lucario. And that, I think, is one of the biggest problems with Lucario when I see someone pick it is, you know, it's a coin flip. Half the time they're really going to know how to play Lucario, and half the time they've just been told it's one of the best Pokemon in the game and they have no clue what they're doing with it. It's actually one of the tougher Pokemon to be really, really proficient with. However, if you are, you're amazing with Lucario. So this is a Pokemon when I see people choose, I think, this could really go either way. I think the community is not sure how to play Lucario exactly. They know it's good, but they don't really know what to do with it entirely. So I think we see a lot of wild swings with a Pokemon like that. Let's talk about someone who is okay. Let's talk about someone who's usually okay. This is a Pokemon we talked about earlier as one of the top tier Pokemon in the other tier list, and that's Cinderace. I don't think Cinderace players are mostly great. I think they're usually okay. And the reason I put them a little below mostly great is if someone doesn't know how to effectively play on the edges of Cinderace's range until you maybe need to move a little further for some KOs, you're going to get KO'd repeatedly as Cinderace. You're really, really squishy. So while Cinderace is great, it puts out tons of damage, and I'm happy to see Cinderace popular again in the meta. I think it's often only usually okay. Yeah, people can be great with it, and I never really see it into the quite bad territory, but I don't think a lot of people understand Cinderace's positioning, which again is just kind of on the edges of combat until it's time to go in. And sometimes when it's time to go in, it can be really hard to gauge. So just being on the outside of combat, kicking your soccer balls at people, doing a lot of damage, I think you're usually doing pretty good inside of a match. But I also think a lot of people don't understand how to best position Cinderace to win. So as you can see here, a little different from the tier list we looked at earlier. I don't think people are mostly great when they play as Cinderace, and especially Lucario. I don't think people are mostly great when they play as Lucario. Let's talk about a B tier choice. Cramorant. Cramorant, I think, is a B tier choice. I almost want to put Cramorant into the wild swings category. I don't think most people know how to play Cramorant, but also if you just have Hurricane and Surf and you're knocking people up and hitting them with Surf, you're pretty useful. And then if you use your Unite at a team fight, you're pretty useful. However, I think most people are not good at the fundamentals that make Cram good. I also think there are people playing the Dive Air Slash build, which again, solo queue, you can kind of do whatever you want and do pretty well. In my opinion, it is not a good build at all. So Cramorant falls in this weird area where yes, it has wild swings, but it's also hard to do super poorly with it. But if you pick Dive Air Slash, I think you're in the quite bad category. I don't really know where to put a Pokemon like Cram, so I'm going to put it in the B tier. The other thing about it is its Unite move is so good, even if you really don't know what's happening and you just use its Unite move at a team fight at Dreadnought, you're still pretty dang useful for the team. So hopefully after seeing those, we kind of have a vibe as to how the rest of this list is going to go, and hopefully this all makes sense to you. I know, again, this is all subjective, and I'm kind of, I put this together beforehand, and I know where every Pokemon's going to go, essentially, but I'm also talking through it out loud, so hopefully you can understand my thought process when I see it. Here is a Pokemon that on our previous list was a little lower, but I think people play mostly great, and that's Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff might have some issues in the top level of competitive play right now, but in general, Wigglytuff is amazing. If you just have Sing on Wigglytuff, you're amazing. It's so good. Even with the nerf on Sing, it's not that big of a deal. Solo queue, I think Wigglytuff is still one of the best Pokemon to see on your team. It's hard for someone to play it poorly. How do you play Wigglytuff poorly? I don't know. I guess you only try to catch people with Rollout or something. Even Rollout's really good. Dazzling Gleam is good, and so is Double Slap. There isn't really a way to play Wiggly super poorly. The only issue would be is if someone never engages, but that, I mean, at that point you could put every Pokemon in the quite bad category if you just have to put them up with their worst possible situations. So I think Wigglytuff plays mostly great inside the game at all times. It's so tanky, it's so disruptive, its Sing is so good, its abilities do more damage than you expect. I think Wigglytuff is mostly great when I see an ally pick it. Let's do someone with some wild swings. This Pokemon I want to put in Wild Swings, and I also want to put in Quite Bad. And I think I'm going to put it in Wild Swings, and that's Gardevoir. Gardevoir teeters into the Quite Bad category, and it suffers similar issues to Garchomp, but at least it's at range, I guess, is the only saving grace. Gardevoir needs so much experience to become very, very good. But then once it becomes good and you can start hitting people with Psy Shock or Future Sight and Moonblast, it can be really amazing. If you know how to play Gardevoir, I think you're doing pretty dang good. Part of me feels like this moves into the often quite bad category, though. I mean, if I'm thinking often, if I'm being honest here, I think people are often quite bad with Gardevoir. I think this has a better shot. Like, when I see people pick Garchomp, I think we're in trouble. When I see people pick Gardevoir, you know what? I think the same thing. I have to be honest. I think it's often quite bad. I think it's better probably than Garchomp. Not that I'm really ranking these too much, but I think it's better than Garchomp. But if I'm just looking at it from purely how does this Pokemon perform when I see an ally choose it, the answer is often quite bad. And it's because it takes so long to get the experience it needs. And then even when it does, it's usually lagging behind because it didn't do well at the team fight, or it stayed top, which is sometimes pretty good. You know, it's weird, but Gardevoir is almost a Pokemon that I can totally forgive not rotating. I'm not recommending you do this, by the way, but I can kind of forgive it for not rotating down to Dreadnought because it's not very useful until it gets its abilities. I don't know. Yeah, I have to say this Pokemon's often quite bad. I do. Yeah, I do. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is the case. Let's see. Let's go with a Pokemon that I think is actually in the mostly great category now, and that is Talonflame. Talonflame, I think, used to be in the often quite bad category, but since its buffs and the amount of damage it does, I actually see most people playing Talonflame really, really well, especially if they're using the fly build. It's not that hard. You just kind of hover over something and land down on it. So I could see saying that this moves into the usually okay category because some people just jump into the enemy lines and they're kind of feeding a bit. But I actually think when I see people pick Talonflame, they're pretty much playing it. They're playing it pretty well, actually. Talonflame's in a really good spot right now. Its damage is insane, and I actually see people playing Talonflame mostly great. I like seeing a Talonflame on my team. They're actually doing pretty good right now. Who else? Whom else? Ooh, this is an interesting one. We got to get into some of the defenders here. I'll put a couple defenders out here. I'm going to put Blastoise and Mamoswine and Snorlax out here right now. We'll talk about some of the others here in a moment. So for Blastoise, I actually think mostly great. And the big reason is Blastoise's Unite move. Outside of that, it's extremely tanky. You know, the interesting thing about this when you look at it is if a Pokemon is very tanky and their Unite move is pretty useful and their abilities are pretty useful, it's hard to see someone playing them poorly. I don't think you're going to see someone playing Blastoise that poorly. Just using its Unite move a couple times, pushing people around with Hydro Pump and Surf, it's not going to be that terrible. It does take a while to level, but unlike Gardevoir and Garchomp, it's still useful before it does. And then once it gets its Unite move, it's just insane. Its Unite move is honestly way too good. But I actually think people are mostly great with Blastoise. It's one of the best Pokemon in the game, especially for the solo queue. Mamoswine, I'm not gonna lie, I see people usually playing Mamoswine okay. I've been a little hard on Mamo, and I think it's because I'm just so unimpressed with Mamoswine's Unite move. I'm shocked that they gave it such a weak Unite move compared to Blastoise. In my head, I just see the two and I think, why wouldn't you run Blastoise? It's just better. But I do think people are playing Mamo pretty well. I have a lot of fun playing Mamoswine too. I know that's not exactly what this tier list is about, but I actually think Mamoswine's a really fun choice. And I see people playing it pretty well because it gets pretty tanky, it freezes and stuns people. You don't have to do a ton to make Mamoswine useful. Now, if you're running Ice Fang, I could see dropping this down a few pegs. One that I think, in my opinion, actually ends up in an interesting category is Snorlax. I think Snorlax ends up in the Wild Swings category. So part of it is the Flail build. If you're running Flail, you're either amazing or you're awful. It is such a hard build for newer players to get a handle on, and I think people think it's going to be good because they were using it in a standard match and people were just kind of letting them KO them. It is a really hard build to get good with. Not saying it's bad, it could be very good, but it's really hard to get good with. Then, if you see them run Heavy Slam Block and they don't know how to use Block, they're just so rough. So, when I see a Snorlax, actually, more often than not, I'm thinking, I wonder which way this is going to go. And that's why I have to put it in the Wild Swings category. A Snorlax who knows how to use its block, Heavy Slam, even a Snorlax who really knows how to use its Flail build, I think is really incredible. And if you're just kind of off on playing this Pokemon, I think you're going to put your team in some really bad situations. So that's why I'm putting it into the Wild Swings category. People are either great or not great at all. Who's next? Let's talk about Zeraora. Zeraora is one of the better Pokemon I see people play, and it's because of Discharge. Because Discharge exists, I think people are often really good with Zeraora. So I have to be honest, I think Zeraora is a mostly great Pokemon choice when I see an ally pick it. You rarely see a Zeraora and think, oh, they don't know what they're doing with the Pokemon Zeraora. Now, maybe they're not around you, maybe they don't show up to team fights or something like that, but I've actually had a lot of positive experiences laning and having a Zeraora in the jungle, or even laning with a Zeraora. I think people are understanding how to play this Pokemon, and when I see it picked on my team, I think they're going to be mostly great. I will say, this is probably way too late in this list to say this, but this also does not count for the lowest ranks of the game. The lowest ranks of the game, anything goes. But as you start to move up in the ranks into Vet, Ultra Master, you see more competent players, and I think this is about in that range is where I'm taking all of this information from, or this is where I'm basing my tier list off of, is moving into some of the higher ranks here. Let's see. Who do we want to do next? Let's do Crustle. Crustle is a Wild Swings Pokemon for me. It's either they understand how to play Crustle, they're at objectives, and they are scoring, taking out wild Pokemon, etc., or they don't understand how to play Crustle, and they are just running around the map scoring. They're not doing anything else of value. They think just because they end the game with 250 points, but your team lost, that they did a great job, and that's not necessarily the case. You need to do both as Crustle. You need to be really aggressive against enemy goals, scoring all the time, keeping the enemies off balance, like they're almost not sure where this Crustle is going to come from. However, at the same time, you need to participate in the big team fights and objectives. And I see Crustles that do both, that literally are heroic in how many points they score and how much pressure they're putting on the enemy, and make it to objectives. And then I see Crustles who never come to objectives. They think just because they completely destroyed the top lane and your team lost that they somehow did a good job. So I think they're in the Wild Swings category for me. Another Wild Swings category is Absol. Absol's gotten better, and actually, in some ways I want to move Absol into the B tier, but you know what? And in fact, I will. And here's the reason I'm moving Absol into the B tier instead of the Wild Swings. I think Absol used to be a Wild Swing Pokemon, where you'd get one on a team. It would always take jungle, even though someone wanted jungle more. Back when Greninja was the jungle meta, you'd think, okay, great, we lost our jungle to Absol, but what are you going to do? It's a speedster, so it needs to go there for the most part. Now, I think Absol has kind of been shored up a bit, and with the addition of Razor Claw as an item, I feel like I'm seeing Absol in a much more competent fashion. You'll still see bad ones, and I think because of what it does to your jungle comp in the game, sometimes it goes into the Wild Swings category, at other times usually okay, and that's where I guess I don't know where to exactly put Absol. Before, I would have put Absol into the Wild Swings are often quite bad. Now, sometimes it teeters into the usually okay. I see people playing Absol a lot better, but you still have the same issues that you've always had with Absol, so I'm going to put it B tier for now. It's going to hang out in B tier. I'm not exactly sure what to say about Absol. Let's talk about a really interesting one. This is another B tier for me, so let's talk about it, and that's Greninja. Okay, For a little while, everyone was picking Greninja. After kind of the Cinderace nerf, everyone was picking Greninja. Come, gather round, children. Let me tell you a tale of long, long ago, when Cinderace got nerfed hard, and everyone started picking Greninja. People play Greninja like he's a real freaking ninja. They're hiding in bushes. They're not participating in team fights. They're just waiting the last second to throw their Unite move at it. Some people play Greninja in such a fashion that you just think I don't know who convinced you to play like this, but it's the worst play style I've ever seen. Then people started playing Greninja more and more and more and more. We saw it move up in the meta. It was basically the only jungler for a little while. So Greninja started to become someone that people understood. Now Greninja has a nerf and a buff in a weird way. So some of its moves, its double team is kind of buffed, but overall it's nerfed. So it's a lot squishier than it was before. It's so easy to get taken out as Greninja. In some ways, I want to say wild swings, but people actually got pretty competent with it, and then it got nerfed. So I have to put this in this unknown tier right now. It's not as bad as it used to be, where I think Greninjas were throwing games. People did not know how to play it, and they were playing it like they were sneaking in to an enemy fortress or something like that and never participating in the rest of the game. People actually got pretty good with Greninja. They actually did. And now it got nerfed, and I actually don't see it as much anymore at all either, so I'm putting Greninja into the B tier. Let's talk about a Pokemon who's actually usually okay, and that's Pikachu. Pikachu is not one of the best Pokemon in the game, but I think it's actually pretty easy to play Pikachu. It's not hard to just keep throwing your abilities. The only issue is you're very, very squishy, and people come in and they eat you up. So as long as you kind of hang out on the sidelines, just like Cinderace for the most part, you're actually pretty good with Pikachu. You're really good in the early laning phase. I don't see people pick Pikachu and do terribly at what Pikachu can do. Now, it might not be the best choice inside the game, but I think people play Pikachu in a pretty solid fashion. Your abilities are on low cooldowns, throw them a lot, catch people in Electro Webs, Thunderbolts, Volt Bolts, Electro Balls. Volt Bolts? It's a Volt Tackle. I think Pikachu's actually, yeah, people are usually okay with Pikachu. I don't have too many problems with Pikachu. Let's see. Who else? Ninetales. Ninetales is also a usually okay choice. I think a super solid Pokemon. It's hard to be incredibly bad with Ninetales unless you're really aggressive and you get yourself out of position a lot. Ninetales has no dash. So if you don't play Ninetales correctly, you keep getting dived on by the enemy team. And for that reason, I think you could see Ninetales start losing kind of hard. But most people know to play Ninetales pretty back, you know, pretty away from things. Just getting in there with your Aurora Veil and your Dazzling Gleam, or even the Ice build. The Blizzard Avalanche, I think, is actually a lot better right now. So I usually think people are okay when they play Ninetales. Let's talk about who's got some wild swings on here still. You know, I want to say Gengar has wild swings, but it doesn't. It's often quite bad. And this is not the player's fault, really. It's Gengar's fault. Gengar needs a lot of help. In this current meta, it's just not very good. Especially solo. I can't remember what they said on the top ranked players, but it's not good. It doesn't do enough damage, even though it feels like it does a lot. It's just odd. It's just an odd Pokemon. It's not good for any of the later team fights. I hate to say it, but you see these Pokemon at the bottom of tier lists a lot, and I understand why. It's not that useful for a team. It's often just doing some dumb stuff. I wish it was better. I don't know exactly how to fix it. At one point, it was considered vastly overpowered, and now I think it's vastly underpowered. So I feel like they need to do a little something for our buddy Gengar here. Here's one with some wild swings. Mr. Mime. Oh boy, Mr. Mime, one of my favorite characters in the game right now. For the longest time, I didn't play Mime. For the longest time, I didn't even play Mime. And that felt like one of those old school raps where you start with your name. My name is Jake, and I'm here to say I play Mr. Mime in a weird way. Mr. Mime is so good, so tanky, actually does so much damage. A very odd support because it doesn't feel like it does what a support does. It kind of feels more like a defender to me, honestly. But If you have a Mr. Mime on your team, I've said this for the longest time and I still think it's true, they're either going to be the best player in the match or the worst player in the match. There's no in between with Mr. Mime. They're either going to win the game or lose the game. I kind of love seeing a Mime on my team, but in general, it's either they know what they're doing or they don't. Really, that's it with Mr. Mime. So you get some real wild swings out of Mr. Mime. Here's a B tier for us, and that's Charizard. Yeah, I kind of want to put this in usually okay, but it's not usually okay because of its laning phase. Its laning phase is so bad. It starts off the game so bad, you guys. It's very frustrating to see Charizard in the state that it's in because it takes so long to get good. They've done a lot to make it better, and I think now that Flamethrower is a super solid move, I think Charizard is a lot better than it used to be, but man, it still has issues, and it's its laning phase. It's how weak it is early in the game. And because of that, I'm not sure exactly where to put it. I think once Charizard kind of gets going, it's actually really decent. And in that sense, I want to put it in usually okay. I also kind of want to put it in wild swings because if you don't do a good job with it early, you're in a lot of trouble. But right now, I'm just a little unsure on this one. I'm going to have to put it in the B tier. Let's see. Machamp. Machamp I actually think is usually okay. It has a similar issue, very, very similar to Char, and then it's that its laning phase is bad. In that sense, I could put it B, or I could put it wild swings, but you know, if people play Machamp, I bet it's one of the least popular Pokemon in the entire game to play. If people play Machamp, they're actually usually decent at what Machamp does. I don't mind having Machamp on my team. They get off a couple really strong Unite moves. They can use their submission to grab enemies so I can take them down. I actually like having Machamp on the team, and I think they usually play a pretty good match. Let's see. Final few Pokemon here. And I will talk about Sylveon on this list as well, where I think Sylveon's going to be. Eldegoss is another usually okay. It's kind of hard to be bad with Eldegoss, but it's easy to not be present. And that's just a game sense thing. As a support, you really should be at pretty much every Pokemon should be at every objective with your team, helping them win the bigger team fights, but especially your support players. I think it's kind of hard to be bad with Eldegoss. I don't see wild swings from this at all. I think Eldegoss is a usually okay choice. When I see it on my team, I think, yeah, they're going to do pretty good. I really do think so. Slowbro. Slowbro is usually okay. Yeah. Usually okay. That's where I'm going to put Slowbro. I think it's usually okay. It's not terrible. It's not, I'm not confused by it with, you know, B tier where I'm like, where do you put this exactly? It's usually okay. It's hard for it to be super bad. Sometimes I see a Scald Bro and it's not useful to the team that much, or, you know, they miss all their telekinesis or something. They're running amnesia. So you could see some swings with it, but it's just, here's the thing. Pokemon that are really tanky have tons of HP, tons of defense and stuff like that, or at least there for the enemies to focus on, and you can have your carries do their job. It's hard for a lot of them to be bad, and I guess that's where we come to with Blissey as well. Blissey, I feel like, also hangs out in the usually okay category. Blissey has so much HP. It has a heal that's not hard to do. Its helping hand is very useful. I guess if you see an Egg Bomb Blissey, it kind of moves into the wild swings category, because even still, it's got so much life. I guess a big thought behind this is if you pick a Pokemon that's really, really tanky and can be around for a long time, it's kind of hard for it to be terrible, right? It's kind of hard for it to be super, super terrible. And I think Blissey falls into that category as well as usually an okay choice. Let's talk about Sylveon now, where I think it's going to go. Of course, I have no idea, so I could set it into the B tier for now, and that would be great. And everyone loves the B tier because still got the B tier. But I actually think this Pokemon is going to end up in the wild swings category for a little bit and then bounce into the maybe even mostly great category. At first, this is going to be wild swings. People aren't going to know how to play it. It's a new Pokemon, and it's not going to be as tanky as someone like Mamoswine. But when you see this Pokemon do well, I think it's going to be a clear MVP in most matches. MVP, how the game rates it. It's also going to do a ton of KOs and help the team a lot if it's played well. So I do think you're going to see this in the wild swings category at first, and then probably settle into the usually okay. We don't know all the values for everything yet, but they haven't released a Pokemon yet that is just awful, even though Gardevoir has a lot of issues inside the meta. That's probably been their toughest release. I think Sylveon's going to release, and decent players who play Sylveon, a few matches, I think they're going to be very, very good. The first few times people pick up Sylveon, I think it's going to go very, very poorly. But there you go. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know what you thought about my analysis of the competitive tier list. I want to talk more about that as well. And also let me know what you think. Is this about what you see? I'm trying to use my hands correctly. Is this about what you see when you see allies pick these Pokemon? These ones are going to be pretty good. These ones are, unknown. These ones are often bad. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching. I am seriously out of it today, guys, because I almost didn't do the most important thing, and that's move everything around to catch people who only skip to the end and then leave weird comments. I can't believe it. So again, that is why Gengar is one of the best Pokemon in the game. You can't nerf the fact that he can still jump in from out of nowhere and hit you over and over and over again. The ability to take a Pokemon out, like assassinate a Pokemon, can't be overstated. We all know that Venusaur is amazing and that Lucario is usually a pretty strong Pokemon, but given what Gengar can do, you see Pokemon like Cinderace, Zeraora, Eldegoss, Ninetales, all of them can get quickly assassinated by a Pokemon like Gengar. If you don't have a Gengar on your team, you're running the risk of the opponents running a Gengar and that Pokemon getting rid of every single one of your squishier targets. Basically, the way an encounter works is one team goes in, they don't see the enemy Gengar then attacks the back line, gets rid of all the carries, and then you just clean the whole thing up. So as I say over and over again, if you're not running Gengar, you are losing right now, and most of the time people are crushing it with Gengar, and it's why Pokemon like Zeraora and Cinderace are some of the worst Pokemon you can play right now. So I hope that helps. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.